Well, hello there, everyone. Thanks for joining me. We're going to be playing a World of Warcraft for an hour here, and this is a game that has become increasingly queer as time has gone on. They've added canon queer ships to the game. They've added the first canonically transgender character to the game with the most current expansion, Shadowlands. So check that out if you're a fan of fantasy. I wanted to show off a little something here at the beginning of the run. This is something they also added here in the Shadowlands expansion. You can actually change the gender of your character here in the barbershop at any time for like a nominal in-game fee. This used to be something you had to pay for. They've made it, just something you just go and do anytime you want. So, for instance, this character that I'm playing, which is my main World of Warcraft character that I've been playing for over a decade, used to be a male troll, which is what they look like. You can see they have a hunched appearance, but I gained some tabards that I wanted to show off, and you can't see them correctly. So now this character's a female troll because you can see the tabards, which show off that tabard there. Um, so yeah, we are going to be playing a dungeon from Mists of Pandaria, which is the fourth World of Warcraft expansion. And that being said, Pandaria is kind of a hard continent to traverse. So luckily, this character is an engineer. So we're going to use a teleporter that I happen to have and see where it takes me in the continent of Pandaria. So it's a random location based on zone. Okay, so Kunlai Summit. First off, if you've never seen Warcraft at all, this is an MMO, but the series actually originated as a real-time strategy game. It's an over 25-year-old series, and the central conflict is the conflict between two factions called the Horde and the Alliance. One which is headed up by humans, and the other which is nominally headed up by orcs. The Horde is more of the warlike faction, whereas the Alliance is more of the traditional kingdoms order. Oh, I see you've noticed the background octopus. That's Taco, my giant octopus plush. This Mists of Pandaria, this continent was hidden by a secret mist back in the ancient times of World of Warcraft to protect its inhabitants from the rest of the world. It was the site of a giant war between the old gods and their forces and several other empires, including the Troll empires. So I teleported to Kunlai Summit, which is where the home of the Loremaster faction and the Shadow Clan. That's actually where my screen name, LMMotoss, comes from, is the faction here. We are going to head here to the barrier between the Valley of the Four Winds and the Dread Waste. The Dread Waste is kind of ruled by a faction called the Klaxi, who are an insectoid race who still worship the old gods, who are some of the big bads of Warcraft. Now, this expansion did something really interesting, where you could work for the Klaxi. In fact, if you were to look in my reputations here from Mists of Pandaria, you can see I am exalted with the Klaxi. Even though there's no doubt they are one of the evil factions of this game, but it was kind of an enemy of my enemy is my friend type of situation, and the faction made no secret that they would betray you if you ever went against their god, which you did, so you ended up killing your allies in a raid at the end of this expansion. The old god associated with this continent is Yasarj, who is actually dead by the time of Warcraft. The pantheon that we know in Warcraft, called the Titans, actually plucked him out of the planet. They decided to not do that to the rest of the old gods because plucking Yasarj out of the planet created this thing called the Well of Eternity in the planet, which became the Maelstrom, and it's the reason why there are continents in Warcraft. It exploded in a giant explosion which blew the continents apart. It was all just one thing before, but it is still located here in the Maelstrom. Thank you for the spelling in chat. It's a hard word to pronounce. So the dungeon that we are picking here is going to be, what was it? the Gate of the Setting Sun, which was built in order to stop these Klaxi from invading an idyllic area called the Valley of the Four Winds, which is where the majority of the Pandaren population used to live on this continent. So the Klaxi have like a birth and death cycle where they. Oh, hi, Moonblaze. I appreciate it. Um, the Klaxi have a birth and like rebirth cycle, which is in on a 10,000 year timer, basically. So we're talking long periods of time. This invasion that happened during this expansion came early, and that's because the Klaxi Queen kind of went became a little unhinged. Um, she got basically too close to parts of the old god that used to rule there, which they call the Shah. They're basically essences of different vices that have plagued the Pandaren continent since Yasarj was pulled out. So, we're going to go to Gate of the Setting Sun here. It's not a dungeon I've been to in a very long time. So it's part of this wall, which of course, this was the China themed expansion. So this is modeled after the Great Wall of China, and it was keeping the Pandaren safe from the Klaxi. You can see they've kind of busted through here. And we have a gate which will let us get into the dungeon. I believe it is up here in Vale of Eternal Blossoms, yes. So the Klaxi basically rule the western half along with a race based on yaks called the Yongle. Kunlai Summit has Yongle as well, and then the Jade Forest is more of like a freer area with the Pandarans kind of inhabiting the center of the continent. And if you have any questions about what I'm saying in chat or anything I will be talking about or anything about Warcraft unrelated to what I'm doing, feel free, because otherwise I'm just going to give a lot of info as it comes into my brain, basically. This area, Valley of Eternal Blossoms, actually was very beautiful at the beginning of the expansion. You can't experience it the same way now, but there was an event in game that kind of ruined this zone, and Horde heroes and Alliance heroes had to come and kind of fix it up. And then further, in a later expansion, Battle for Azeroth, this area is invaded by one of the remaining old gods, N'Zoth. So it once again changes. So they have used old zones for new events and ideas sometimes. So we can see this giant gate. I don't know when they would have actually opened it, because it doesn't really make sense to me to open it. But, you know, sometimes they'll think, you see, they're already on this side because they fly. The larger Klaxi do not fly, though, so that's part of the reason why the gate exists. I'll show you a little bit on the other side. You can see they have some war machines here. So, we're going to go here and figure this out. Now, it has been quite a while since I played this dungeon, so I'm going to have to restore my memory a little bit when I enter. The good thing is that Blizzard, since the beginning of the game, they've added a lot of quality of life features, and some of that is what we call the dungeon guide, which explains the mechanics for various bosses and also, you know, how to, you know, where they fit in, what they're doing there. You can see I have quests that I didn't do in here. That's very unlike me. But you can see this first boss is going to be a Saboteur Kiptilak, which you would think usually insectoid races are not intelligent, but the insectoid races of WoW are actually not only intelligent, sometimes they are more intelligent than you would think, from the other races. So this part would basically be if you were playing it when it was current content. You'd kind of be running through here because the artillery starts firing at you. And basically this is just a mechanic where you have to run the gauntlet while you're fighting all these enemies and avoiding enemy fire, and then it stops when you get here. Not much to say about this boss. Lore-wise, he has no importance outside this dungeon, so we're just gonna nip that. So, those were bombs that exploded, by the way. They make, the Killik make their technology out of amber. It's not really explained how they do it, but all of their bombs, machines, everything is amber related, and they basically use it as currency as well. They actually live in gigantic trees that are necessary for their life cycle that only exist in the western part of the continent. So that's partially why they're not anywhere else. And that's also why you end up helping some Killiks, because some Killik heroes that they call the Paragons are interested in seeing the continuation of their race, and the queen has kind of gone mad, and she's basically threatening their future existence by destroying the trees now. So it's not that they actually want to be traitors, it's that they actually want what's best for their species. Well, got a little something here exploded. You can actually fall off that and you'll just die automatically as well. So we're heading to basically the second boss now, which is just a Killik commander. Once again, this dungeon doesn't have like a huge amount of lore significance. It's more kind of, they were using it to set the ambience, so that you know more about the conflict between the Pandaren and the Killik.
That signal fire. Without reinforcements, they'll destroy the gate.
So we will be heading here, where we'll be dodging fire. Now, environmental damage in WoW actually is a problem because it is not scaled. I should say it is scaled by your level. So the more HP you have, like, for instance, falling in lava is always a threat in Warcraft, no matter how old the zone is, because it doesn't deal a set amount of damage. It deals a set percentage of your health. So it turns out you have to actually activate this boss, which I did not do. And also, I need to be riding that elevator. Oh. So let's bring it back down. This is also one of the first expansions that you had to actually go through without flying, and you had to learn flying later. Which is a good... I agree with that decision on Blizzard's part. Blizzard's the company that makes Warcraft. And because it does make you experience it the way they want you to, instead of just flying over everything. So here we have just another Killik commander.
I am out of range.
I've been told to raise my bit rate, so let's see. Okay, maybe that will help whatever you all are seeing. So now we're going to use the cannons here. This will activate the next fight so that that fire gets cleared, and it will spawn the next boss. Because apparently they have flak cannons that work with fuses. It's very steampunk here in World of Warcraft. Okay, so that should be good. Now we're gonna go back down. So the thing that is really crazy about this expansion is, first off, this is the first World of Warcraft expansion that I did not play when it was live content. So I had to go back and do a bunch of this stuff later, which explains why I'm so unfamiliar, because unlike everything else, which I would have played like a lot of times while it was live content, I only really went through everything in Pandaria once, and also raised all my reputations, because that's sort of my deal in this game. We already killed that guy, so now we have to go down, basically. I'm just kind of wondering how to get there. We needed to go up top to clear, so we're using logic. We had to clear this fire because we needed to go this way. That means we need to go this way to get down to the bottom, right? I think that's how it works. You also can't mount up at dungeons, even though you're outside. It's just a World of Warcraft thing.
The gates are about to fall! Quickly! Slaughter this meddler!
Oh, there we go. We light the signal fire. That's going to cause, I believe, more reinforcements to come. Yeah, see, this is what I'm talking about, the ground-based Killiks. They have gigantic, basically siege units that are bred for this purpose. But don't let that fact fool you. They have just as much intelligence as the rest of the Killiks.
There will be.
Running old dungeons like this is also a pretty popular pastime in Warcraft because of the transmogrification system. I know we probably have a lot of fans of Final Fantasy XIV in the chat. Shout outs to Final Fantasy XIV, also an excellent game. But the glamour system in Final Fantasy XIV already exists in WoW as well. It's called transmogrification here. And it basically lets you appear to be wearing gear that is different than what you actually have equipped. So if we look at my character here, this gear is not what she is wearing. She has a bunch of gear from the newest expansion. This gear set with all the skulls and runes and stuff is actually from the Legion expansion. It's from the Broken Isles continent, specifically from a raid called the Trial of Valor. I kind of RP this character as worshipping the troll Loa of Death, Bwansamdi, so I wanted it to have like a little bit of bone in it. The weapons, likewise, are just different appearances of a legendary weapon called the Doomhammer in Warcraft, which has been wielded by a great many Horde heroes over time. I'm probably going to die here. Ooh, okay, yeah. Fall damage is a thing. So we're now supposed to kill this guy, and large enemies in this game animate weirdly. They're always kind of like slowly animated, I think because it looks unsettling if they move quickly. And I forget, I don't know how you're actually supposed to beat this boss. I think you use these cannons some way. In fact, that's definitely what you do. So we get up here, we hit the weak spot.
I am out of range.
And then he's dead already. Look at that. And that's it. That's this dungeon. So we are going to get out of here. So what I'm going to do now is go back to Orgrimmar in a roundabout way. Thank you very much for everyone who picked this. I'm now going to go to my already planned overflow dungeon, which happens to be a raid called Molten Core. It's the first raid from World of Warcraft, all the way back in, 2005 or 6 when this game came out. And it has very interesting history, so we're gonna mosey on over there. So, it's actually kind of one of the only places in WoW where there's not like a super convenient teleport to get there anymore. It used to be that you could teleport to an abandoned mage's tower called Karazhan, which is quite close. That is not the case. That teleport has been removed from the game. So I'm going to go to a zone that was added in the Cataclysm expansion, where a insane dragon named Deathwing kind of wrecked a bunch of zones. It's called Twilight Highlands, and then we're going to fly from there. Oop, I accidentally went to Mount Hyjal. That is not even on the right continent. Shoutouts to Warcraft 3, though. Goodbye, Mount Hyjal. So, some background on Molten Core. First off, Molten Core takes place in a mountain called Blackrock Mountain, which is not only the site of a lot of dwarf history in this game, and is currently inhabited by the Dark Iron Dwarves, but it was the scene of many an important event in the original real-time strategy games in the 90s. So Blackrock Mountain was where the Orcish invasion forces, in both wars actually, the Second War more, made their home. So it was like basically their main forward base. It's located here in the Burning Steppes / Searing Gorge. It's a giant mountain. It's basically the biggest mountain in the Eastern Kingdoms. So, it was the scene where Orgrim Doomhammer killed the Alliance hero Lothar, who was not only the leader of their armies, but like one of the mightiest warriors that they had. You may remember Lothar from the Warcraft movie, if you saw that. He is one of the main characters in that movie. He, along with his mage friend Medivh and a half-orc spy named Garona, are responsible for killing Medivh when he fell. Which was necessary because Medivh was the one who opened the portal that allowed the orcs to invade Azeroth, which is the planet this game takes place on, in the first place. So the only reason that the Horde faction is even here is because a possessed mage and a few demons used the orcs to invade this planet and weaken it. The orcs later kind of freed themselves from demonic influence and built a kind of a coalition, which we call the Horde now. Has very little connection to the Horde as it existed when it invaded Azeroth, because that Horde was defeated, pushed back to their homeworld, and the orcs that remained were put into internment camps. Sorry, that get a little heavy, but it ends up the first war chief of this new Horde was named Thrall. He liberated all those orcs, and they and their allies kind of created a new civilization. Now, back to Blackrock Mountain. After the wars ended, there still remained orcs here in Blackrock Mountain. They inhabit the upper parts of it, whereas the Dark Iron Dwarves inhabit the bottom parts. The orcs that remained were part of the Blackrock clan, which seems weird because Blackrock is not even from their planet, but you'll have to ask Blizzard about that. And also the Dragon Maw clan. Also doesn't make sense because there's no dragons on Draenor, which is where the orcs are from. So anyways, the orcs inhabit the top of this mountain, Dark Irons underneath. The Dark Irons had a problem though, and it's the classic dwarves delving too deep problem, except they did it on purpose. The Dark Iron Dwarves use elementals to do their bidding, but they kind of got a little greedy, and they summoned the Lord of Fire, Ragnaros. So Ragnaros is way too powerful for the Dark Irons to keep control, so their entire race ended up being enslaved by him instead of the other way around. And this was a central conflict in original WoW. Like I said, it was the first 40-man raid, so you needed 40 players to tackle this back in the day. There was a reputation associated with it called Hydraxian Waterlords, who for obvious reasons would like to see the Fire Lord Ragnaros brought down. A very interesting part of this raid, and I will show you when we get there, is that you could not just enter this raid when it was original content. You actually had to enter it through a dungeon called basically a subzone called Blackrock City in Lower Blackrock Spire. So you basically went through a dungeon and then you opened a special door in that dungeon to enter the raid. Now, there was a quest where you could attune yourself. They had attunement quests for lots of WoW dungeons, which lets you do the harder version. But in this case, the attunement lets you enter the dungeon in a pretty special way. So there's an NPC down here, Lothos Riftwalker. He's to give you a quest. You can talk to him and have him transport you to the Molten Core if you've done the quest. Or, if you've done the quest, you can also just jump out this window and you go in. So that was a kind of a cool factor in the original game. You basically knew that someone was up on current content if they didn't have to go through the dungeon in order to get to the raid. So, here we are. WoW's original 40-man, they actually have added an event to the game that kind of mimics this and lets top-level players still play it with a varying degree of difficulty. And I have played this dungeon a lot because, as I said before, my goal in this game is to maximize all my reputations, which here we have the classic ones. And the classic reputations were very special rep guns. A lot of them were very time-consuming, and some of them needed very restrictive things once you got into the upper levels in order to be able to get the rep. And in the case of Hydraxian Waterlords, only kills of the final 2 bosses in this raid would give you reputation once you reach a certain point. So, this is the root of the map. The first boss we're going to face here is Gehennas, who is a, I don't know how you would call it. It's a race that exists in the Firelands called Firewalkers, but they're basically Fire Nagas. So, you have to kill all the bosses in here in order for Ragnaros to get summoned. And we don't actually kill Ragnaros here, that's an important fact. Both demons and elementals in WoW can only truly be killed in their home realm. So if you kill a demon, their soul goes back to what we call the Twisting Nether, which is basically the space between dimensions, and they get reborn later. The same goes for elementals. If you kill an elemental here, they just go back to their elemental plane and are reborn. So when we kill Ragnaros here, it just basically stops him from exploding this mountain. It doesn't actually stop him. We do end up going to his home plane of the Firelands in a later expansion, Cataclysm, where Firelands was the first raid for that one, just like this. And it has a lot of the same enemies. It's very much a throwback. But it's very fun as well, and I've also played quite a bit of that. So, here we go. We're going to go to Gar here, who is an Earth Elemental. Same exact model that my Shaman uses for the Earth Elemental that I can summon. There's nothing special in the lore about him, except this character did drop half of the bindings you needed for one of the sought-after legendary items from the original World of Warcraft called Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade of the Windseeker, which has become kind of a meme in the Warcraft community over time. People would link the item in chat to prove that they had done it. But the other part is dropped up here by a fire elemental named Baron Geddon. I absolutely said Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade of the Windseeker.
I am out of range. It is too far away.
I think I love it. I love it, chat. You're feeding me so much here. But yeah, I think it started because the name of the item was so long that it was just kind of memeable. And even now, you will see people, now that it's very active again with Shadowlands release, you'll see people talking about it. Shazra, another one of these Firewalkers. There's really nothing special about him in the lore at all. I actually just got a helm that I didn't have the appearance of before. This Helm of the Life Giver, and I don't understand how that could be, because I think part of it is I ran this dungeon a lot before Blizzard actually added transmogrification. So you didn't get credit for items that you didn't have in your inventory when transmogrification happened. So in this case, transmog is a little different than Final Fantasy XIV's version, because as I understand it, in Final Fantasy XIV you actually need the item to do the glamour. If I'm not mistaken, some Final Fantasy XIV player correct me if I'm not. But in World of Warcraft, once you have had an item, it just adds it to your transmogrification wardrobe, and you can go to a transmogrifier and change to anything that you've seen before. You don't have to keep the item, basically. It doesn't have to take up inventory space anywhere. Golmag, once again, another fire/earth elemental. This type of elemental's very much expanded upon in Cataclysm, where there is another boss which has like voice lines and everything. So we only have 2 bosses left now. We have the Sulfuran Harbingers, and we have Major Domo Executus. Executus is the key here, because Executus is the one... He doesn't appear until you've beaten all the other bosses, and Executus is the one that allows you to summon Ragnaros. He basically says, okay, you let me live, I'll summon my boss, and he'll just kill you. But we'll see how that works for Executus. Sulfuran Harbinger here is only supposed to be able to be hurt once you kill all these priests. And also, you would need special water to douse this rune. But not only have I already done all those quests, but they're not necessary anymore. But if you notice, all of the snake-type bosses in this dungeon had a rune under them on the ground that was burning, that goes out when they die. There was a quest back in Classic WoW to douse those with basically holy water in order to kind of limit the powers of those bosses, but that is not necessary when you're many, many, many expansions worth of power ahead of the dungeon. It is still crazy to me sometimes that I do this content and one-shot these enemies that it used to take 40 people cooperating together to get through. There is definitely a lot of history behind this game, for sure. More than just that's in the game. Some of it is from the RTS games as well, which, you know. Now, we find out I've screwed up, because I did not kill Lucifron and Magmadar back at the beginning of the dungeon. Therefore, Baron Executus is not... Major Domo Executus is not here. That's very unfortunate. So, we have to go back. Like I said, lava is still a danger. Like, if I fall in this lava, it will hurt me still. Environmental effects are still hurty. So, while I'm walking back here, there are 3 other dungeons and another raid in this mountain, Blackrock Mountain. It's one of the central areas of Classic WoW, basically, before there were any patches. And those would be Upper Blackrock Spire, Lower Blackrock Spire, and then we have also Blackwing Descent, the raid where you would fight the son of Deathwing, Nefarian, before we knew that Deathwing was alive. He was doing experiments on various dragons to try to make more powerful dragons. I've also spent quite a lot of time there because you need to get some Elementium from there to make said Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade of the Windseeker, as well as Sulfurous, Hand of Ragnaros, which comes from this dungeon. well, you still have to create it. I have never gotten the drop you need in order to get it, which drops from Ragnaros himself. If I were to get that today, that would be quite a thing, wouldn't it? Two bosses in here. One is would have been a lot easier than the other at the time. So Lucifron kind of stalks, and then Magmadar just sits in the back. All of these core hounds here, if you aggro those, which means you get their attention, if you don't kill them all at the same time, they actually bring each other back to life with their smoldering flames. So it was actually still a challenge when I was first playing this game. Excellent. I got another copy of this pet. That will be... I have 3 of them already. That just shows you I've done this dungeon quite a bit. So, I used to run this dungeon weekly in order to try to get said Hand of Ragnaros. The way it works in World of Warcraft is you can only do each raid... You can only get loot from each raid once per week. So you couldn't just play this over and over and over again. You can only do it once. So now, unfortunately, I can't just go to Ragnaros, who's right here. I have to go all the way to the end to Executus again. So while I'm walking, if anybody has any questions about the setting or the various factions in this game, I can give a rundown. I'm just happy that I play a shaman and I have Ghost Wolf to make me run faster here. See, what raids existed in Classic? It was this. The next one was Blackwing Descent. You had Onyxia's Lair, which is just one boss in a room. We had the Temple of Ankh-Kiraj, which was a very notable game event, probably infamous. You may have heard of it even if you didn't play Warcraft, because there was a race. There was an in-game event where you would open the gates, and the person who did the long quest line to open the gates got a special title and amount that only they got on their server. Other people could open it if they had the item, like within an hour or two, something like that, afterwards, but otherwise, it was a one-time thing. Oh, Zul'Gurub as well, yes. That's a troll-themed raid, I should say. Which, it's kind of a living meme in the WoW community that every expansion has a troll-themed raid. And so far it's held up, I gotta say.
The sons of the living
Because Classic had Zul'Gurub, Burning Crusade had Zulaman, Wrath of the Lich King had Zul'Farrak, and then Cataclysm had Zulaman again.
Stay your attack, mortals.
And then
Submit. Submit.
what was after that? Missa Pandaria had several troll-themed dungeons raids, including Isle of Thunder.
Regret the recklessness of your course.
Then, what we had?
Now to summon the Lord whose
Warlords of
house this
Draenor?
is. Should you
Did that
seek an
have a
audience
troll-themed
with me,
raid? Maybe we skipped
your
it then.
powerful
We were in a
life
different
will
dimension,
surely
so...
be forfeit.
Different planet, I should say.
Nevertheless, seek out his lair if you dare.
So we've now killed Executus. He says, go seek out his lair. Okay. We'll do that, buddy. That's what we're here to do. And in Shadowlands, we have the newest expansion. we have a troll-themed dungeon. We had many troll-themed dungeons in Battle for Azeroth, of course, because part of that expansion took place in the Zandalari Empire, which is kind of the homeland of all trolls. Every troll tribe that exists in game basically connects their history to the Zandalar Empire. Because, believe it or not, trolls, which is what I'm playing now, are the oldest natural race on Azeroth. It's kind of weird like that. The elves in this game are actually mutations of trolls. They were night trolls that basically got mutated from being close to too much arcane energy, which turned them into elves. And that's kind of where the age-old elf versus troll blood feud kind of happens in this game, which is a thing. So the night elves basically grew out of night trolls, and then all of the other elf races that exist on Azeroth came from night elves. So, you know, the high elves were night elves that used arcane, that decided to split and not use the nature sources. They basically split into nature faction, which was the night elves, and an arcane faction, which was the high elves. The high elves later became blood elves and void elves. So we have a lot. And then we also have the Nightborn, who are basically closer to what the original night elves, or at least the upper crust of night elf society, looked like before the planet exploded. Because that was also a thing. The history of WoW is long, and both trolls and elves existed before the planet exploded. The other races of Azeroth that are from Azeroth, which are humans, dwarves, or I should say playable races, because there's many races that we can't play. But humans and dwarves and gnomes are all actually created by the Titans, which are the arcane pantheon of Warcraft. And they were all non-organic at first, and they were actually cursed by the old gods later to have flesh. So they're actually not natural. The only natural races on Azeroth are the trolls and elves, although calling the elves natural is somewhat not right. So basically the trolls are the only playable race that's natural, and maybe the Pandaren. Everyone else is either mutated or cursed in some way. So, we are going to get Ragnaros here. So, this is what happened. This is where you get the lore here. 300 years ago, the leader of the Dark Iron Dwarves, which is Tharissen, summoned him. We've already killed Tharissen in a dungeon before we came here. So we're going to get Ragnaros. He's like the leader of this merry bunch. And like I said, we don't kill him here. He just...
Behold Ragnaros, the Fire Lord.
He just goes back to the Firelands. We have to kill him 3 expansions from this.
Bow before him, mortals. Bow before your ending. Too soon.
And he yells at Executus because he's not at full power, yada yada yada. This isn't his final form. Which is true. He actually has legs in Cataclysm. He climbs out of his lava pool and attacks you.
And seek to steal your secrets.
They're very small compared to the rest of his body. And he's so big you can't even really... I have my camera zoomed out all the way. You can't really see him all the way. I don't know what Blizzard was thinking when they made you fight him on this tiny platform. You can't see him at all. There he is. Hello, Ragnaros. Hi. Everybody wave to Ragnaros.
Now for you, insects. Boldly
And this raid was really tough when it came out because you actually needed like special gear with fire resistance in order to survive. Did I get anything good? Nope, not what I was looking for. That's okay. So I see that we are basically about to need to wrap up. So I'll just go to the character select screen here and show you all some things. Oh, hi, it's the Shadowlands. This is the new expansion that's actually current content that I'm in right now. So, here we go. We're going to go to the character creator. So, as we can see, there's two factions in this game, the Horde and the Alliance. A lot of my characters are Horde. That just is a product of who I was playing with when I first started playing this game. I actually kind of prefer the Alliance as far as story goes. They usually have a bit better story. And of course, they were the good guys back when I was playing the RTS games. So for me, this is a series I've been playing for my whole life, honestly. I played Warcraft 1. I was like 7 or 8 when it came out. But like we said, we do have humans. They are mutated Vrykul. We have dwarves who are mutated Earthen. We have night elves who are mutated trolls. We have gnomes who are mutated mechano-gnomes. We have the Draenei who are aliens. We have the Worgen who are cursed humans. We have the Pandaren who I don't know where they came from, honestly. I'd have to look into it. They're a race I didn't really know much about because I didn't play Mists of Pandaria when it was current content. But yeah, they might actually be natural. I'd have to look. We have mechanomes who aren't really mechanomes. They're basically half mechanomes. We have Cold Tyrants who are just humans from a certain place. We have Dark Iron Dwarves who are once again just a sect of dwarves who came from Earthen. Lightforged Draenei, which are just holier aliens. And Void Elves, who are Void mutated High Elves, who are themselves Arcane mutated Night Elves. That's the Alliance for you. Then on the Horde side, we have Orcs, who are aliens, who have been mutated by Fel on top of it. We have Nightborn, who are mutated from trolls. We have Undead, who are just humans and others who are resurrected in rotten forms. We have the Tauren, who are actually a naturally occurring race of Azeroth. They were not made, and in fact, there are several sub-races of them that exist. There's the Tauren, based on... oh, that's a High Mountain Tauren, by the way. We have Tauren, who are based on cows. High Mountain Tauren, who are based on elk or deer. We have Yongle, who are based on yaks. I was talking about them earlier in Pandaria. And we have Tonka, who are based on like snow yaks. So there's basically a Tauren sub-tribe in almost every continent in Warcraft. So actually, I take back what I said. They're natural. They all split off naturally. Mag'har orcs, which are just ones that aren't Fel corrupted. Trolls, the OG race, and the character creator lets you change their skin color to match any of the tribes that currently exist in game. Zandalari trolls, which, like we said, are the OG trolls. Blood elves, which are just high elves. Oh, also in Shadowlands, we get the character creation where a lot of different skin tones. Elves were only available in very pale variety before. Pandaren can be on both sides. We get goblins, which are also mutated by this substance called Kejimite. And we get Volpera, which were recently added, and I know hardly anything about where they came from. So I think that's actually going to be it for me. I got to show off one of my favorite raids and talk about the random dungeon we got as well. Thanks for stopping by. Or this, I said lore discussion, it's more of a lore dump, but there we go. And thank you to the Edge Cases for running this event. It's been pretty good so far. We can play with the human here while I'm just messing around here. Let's customize. You can see there's a variety of options now as far as the skin tone goes, which I enjoy. Faces as well. You can't pick some faces. Very fabulous hair styles, as you can see. I think that's the case with any MMO, though. If you don't have a good character creator, then you know, what's going on. Gotcha. Well, does anybody have any questions about any of these races while I have like a couple of minutes to burn here at the end of the presentation and we're sitting here on the character creation screen? I have a TLDR for pretty much any race. Ooh. Excuse me. Drank that water too quick. So, interesting to note that when Void Elves were introduced, they could only have these blue skin tones here. They added the rest here in Shadowlands because they didn't think it was fair to restrict them that much and make them look so much different than the High Elves that they basically come from. The Elves are extra in this game, like they are in most games where they exist. That goes for Final Fantasy XIV Elves as well, although they're called... I forget their name. They're not actually called elves. They're the elf equivalent in that game. Elzen. Yes, that's right. Elzen. Draenei Paladin. Classic. Alright, I'll be handing it over to the next presentation now. Thank you all again for joining me. Headable, I would say the Volpera, honestly. Look at that. Look at their little cute faces as they brandish weapons at you. And then nothing is cute if you make it a death penalty. So. Alrighty. I think that's it for me. Thank you, everybody.